I am Sean with Writer's Lunch, not coming to you from Melange Creperie today. Instead, we are doing a Zoom call with Jessica Eanes from the Dream Foundry in Chicago and talking about socializing in the era of Rona. And Jessica is putting together an awesome event this weekend, which is an online conference, which is really how conferences are just going to be from now on. And I say from now on because we don't know the end date. And I just wanted to talk to you, Jessica, about how things are going with your planning, how things are different than if this would have been in person, and really what your impressions are of how this can be beneficial, because writers are really diminished in their ability to socialize. So what do you do with Dream Foundry?
So Dream Foundry is a nonprofit. Our official mission is to help anybody who is a creative working in the speculative arts. So that's science fiction, fantasy, horror, anything weird, surreal, what-ify, not literal, realistic space. And any kind of creative, so writing, artists, translators, game designers, editors, the whole field, because all of those people, we want to help start their professional careers. And the sort of founding principle behind that is that realistically, most people, if they manage to do this full time as their support, they're wearing multiple hats. And even if you're not yourself doing multiple things, you're working with people who are doing other things. Like it's very collaborative. And so having a way to conceive of yourself as somebody who spans the industry or having the collaborative skill set are both kind of vital to surviving the industry these days. And we would really kind of like to just develop a cohort of people who are capable of doing it full time without also starving. Yeah.
Heck yeah. So in this, and you guys are putting together the Flights of Foundry. Am I saying it right?
Flights of Foundry. Yeah.
Flights of Foundry this weekend. It's coming up Saturday, Sunday, May 16th, 17th. How are you doing right now? Just, emotionally, how you doing?
I don't have emotions, so I'm fine. I engage in glee, amusement, and wrath, and occasionally irritation. And that's about it. I'm leaning towards the glee mostly right now.
So this is a conference that was all designed online. It was meant to be like that, and you have some tech experience that makes this easier for you. Can I ask about that?
So Black Hill Security, half of the infrastructure we're using for the con, they have donated to us for the weekend.
Nice.
So people will periodically hear me referencing, our sponsor thing. That's who we're talking about. Is they have very generously, our main high capacity streams, we did not have to pay for those, and we did not have to have our own expertise in terms of how to configure them and get that set up and running. We are just completely standing on their shoulders on that, which was a huge lift for us.
Okay.
And then me personally, professionally, I've been an IT project manager. That's what I was when I was conference calling and not flying out to places. That was sort of my field. So the whole, I don't know this tech right now, but give me 10 minutes and I'll be able to boss other people in how to doing it is kind of my shtick.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Do you think that this is more work or less than an in-person conference, kind of would be? Is it?
I think it's slightly different and so that's a slightly complicated question to answer because Absolutely. There are a couple of different variables. One thing I have been very grateful about is that I have not had to negotiate with a hotel.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing where I've just been in terms of far distant future planning. When we started this, we were thinking, okay, this will just be a one-off. And as it was going, we were actually, we like this institutionally much better than a Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So we were sort of conceiving this as a Kickstarter replacement to deal with current crisis things. But as we're going, we're we actually institutionally feel a lot better about this than a Kickstarter because it's very much us giving a thing rather than us asking for a thing.
Yeah.
And so the like putting the tip jar out while we just go do this thing over here feels kind of more in keeping with our aesthetic
Yeah.
than
You guys set it up as, and I'm sorry to run over your words, but I love it that, people can look up Flights of Foundry, and I get tickets, and it is a donation basis. There's a suggested donation of $30, which is way less than a conference is going to cost you in any real world situation. And frankly, jumping in 2 feet with, if you want to socialize, if you want to be a writer, but maybe the inspiration isn't coming because of all this things going on and stuff like that, interacting with others and learning new things is a great way to do it. And, we'll post links below. My Flights of Foundry coming up this weekend. How has your outreach been going with, getting attendees, virtual attendees?
So this is going to be the thing I eat the most crow about after. We've done several large events, and we've got a social media manager, and we kind of have like our plans and our matrices, and we want to kind of roughly be in this ballpark of footprint and whatnot, and as we iterate, grow up to this point, and blah 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 blah. And so I had said, kind of based on trying to pivot kind of our planning around where we had laid out our Kickstarter plan to something that would be pragmatic given the circumstances and the change in platform and everything. I was like, okay, well, if we get 130 people who attend having donated $30, I don't know how many people overall that would wind up needing to be. Then we kind of hit what our idealized Kickstarter would have been. That more than what we would have set at our funding level, but at our we are very comfortable here level.
That's great. Yeah.
And when everybody was asking, okay, well, how many people are going to come? What should I expect? I was like, I think we're on target to get about 300. 400 would be really nice, but I think realistically we're going to top out at 3. When I went to bed on Sunday night, several hours after we released the schedule, we were at 300 even registrants. 100 people had registered while I was asleep. We are now well over 500 people registered to attend.
That's great.
And I'm doing these. So some of those smaller streams, what is our capacity to last minute rearrange things in case people show up?
Yes.
Because I had not been doing any kind of planning for capacity management, because I was assuming that all of our capacity was going to far exceed any risk we had. We're still looking fine where we are right now, but I'm now no longer not planning it because I no longer trust my pessimism about who's going to show up.
Yeah, no, and that it dovetails great with the next question I wanted to ask, which was, and you can be general about it, but what kind of technology did you guys have to worry about? It's the essential, the difference between how big are your halls, or how wide is your hallway, or how many food stalls do you have set up, how many hotel rooms are available within walking distance, except, in a digital realm,
Yeah. So the tech was, that was kind of our first kind of really hairy question. And a lot of that wound up sort of answered for us based on who was willing to give us stuff for free, basically. But we sort of in the process in terms of what we were willing to accept for free and how we were planning to use it, had a lot of kind of important conversations around that. One of the things that as an organization we're really adamant about is that none of our valuable content is paywalled.
Cool.
And we're very broad on how we define valuable. So networking, we absolutely acknowledge as being valuable. And so you can get to all of the industry Q&A, article how-to info, but here's the party room that we're blocking off for the people who can pay for the booze.
Yep.
That actually we were fundamentally uncomfortable with, because that party room, the access you have for networking there, winds up just happenstance wise being extremely valuable in a lot of cases. And while yes, you can make it without that, it's not honest to say that isn't a barrier if you can't get in there.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing we really, really weren't comfortable setting up.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Zoom's pretty low, like low hanging fruit and easy, but also has a ton of security concerns, which plenty of people, I know several of our guests of honor actually early on asked about that because they were like, hi, I am not interested in being subjected to racist vitriol in the middle of my programming.
Mhm.
And my response was, I don't imagine you would be.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the trade-off. So it was on the one hand, we want to make sure that things are accessible and available as much as possible. And on the other hand, we want to make sure that we're protecting the people who are creating that content. And especially when you're recording things, you run into intellectual property rights issues a whole lot.
Yeah.
So like we have a huge reading series. All of that is happening on Zoom in a controlled environment with absolutely no recording happening. So it's not different really in terms of what you're risking for future options or sales potential of any of the material you share from if you read it at a convention.
Yeah.
At the same time, and this was a decision that was kind of made for us by our sponsor, all of the main programming stuff will be recorded.
How is it going organizing panelists and guest speakers and stuff? Are people receptive to doing this online versus, you're asking the same question minus a plane ticket that they would have been asked, 6 months ago for a different conference,
So one of the things that I think helped us really get off the ground is that most of the people I approached to be guests of honor, I got yes the first time I asked.
Yay.
I'm going to call out Ken Liu a little bit because he's told me no twice in the last 2 months now, and so I'm going to call him out. I approached him initially to be translator guest of honor, and because we have eight guests of honor. I'd have to count. I've lost track of numbers. I don't know how they work. I'm pretty sure I have between 12 and 15 fingers, so we'll see. But we have guests of honor for just about every medium that we as an organization sort of proactively engage with.
Cool.
And so I approached Ken initially because we have a bit of a relationship. And I was like, Ken, would you be our translator guest of honor? And this was me kind of hedging my bets because I wasn't sure who would say yes to us, but I had a relationship with Ken where I figured it was best chance for a yes. And he goes,
and that's
no.
a great get. Yeah.
And he goes, no, I don't want to be your translator guest of honor. My fiction is actually much more important to me, and I don't want to get branded as a translator. And I really feel like everybody goes to me for translating when actually there are other people who are doing really great work who should get more attention. And he was like, so sorry, no. And I was like, all right, well, Ken, that was me being a chicken because I figured if I couldn't find somebody who'd say yes to fiction guest of honor, I could just double you up. So how about we skip to plan B, and who will you throw under the bus to send me to ask for translator guest of honor?
Yeah, Twitter is where I had seen Diana Fa post that she was going to be as a part of this, and because I follow her on there, then I push forward to actually looking at that and looking at your site and seeing that. So, these social media cues where it sounds like it's advertising or ranting or whatever, are going to become more of that personal touch, that led you to Ken, and from Ken to others.
Yeah, just about everybody we have was from some sort of connection somehow. Either I knew them personally or somebody who was very involved. Lisa Huang deserves a medal.
Yay.
Because just there were several where I'd be like, okay, we need thing. And she'd be like, oh, I know people. And if you just ask, her, okay, who has ideas for stuff? And she's not the only one. I don't want to call her out specifically for this, but lots of people will be like, oh no, I'm just me. I don't have anything to offer. And then I go, I need this specific thing. And they go, well, I don't know why that's stressful for you. It's real easy here.
What are you guys doing to try and personalize visitor experiences for the Flights of Foundry?
So we're doing several things that we're trying to kind of keep things human. The biggest thing is we have a lot happening on our Discord. So within hours of deciding we were going to do a convention, we got a Discord. And I had been pretty anti us having an instantaneous communication platform because of the moderator overhead. And it's really important to me that our spaces are ones that are like sincerely and like actually welcoming and supportive and safe for people to be beginners in, because that is who we are engaging with. And so like we don't expect you to be an expert in all the things the moment you show up, but we do expect you to be willing to be to follow modeling of good behavior and to learn and to grow. And so that's a particularly weighty kind of moderating to do, because it's not just a ban hammer. And even the ban hammer kind of moderating is kind of a heavy load. So like this is particularly weighty. But more of us had more time to spend just observing a space all of a sudden for some reason. And we needed some sort of communication to kind of help facilitate everything. So like just immediately got the Discord, and we're leveraging that very heavily for the convention. So we have a con suite.
Cool.
For our virtual convention.
It's going to be interesting. It's like the mix between somebody texting, while a panel is going on, and those texts actually, like being seen, even if it's shit posts and stuff like that, will be merged.
We have a channel for absolutely every program stream we have. If you would like to shit post in the Discord about what's going on, we have a space for you. We've also got #Flights2020 is the official hashtag for the convention. So anybody who wants to live tweet what's happening, you can, like, there are definitely people where part of their panel viewership experience is processed through the live tweet. So you can do that. You can hang out in the con suite. We've got a dealer's room, so you'll be able to wander through and connect with vendors. So we're doing as much as we can to kind of allow those. We've got a hallway for HallCon. I have a plan for how the con suite's going to work, and I think it's pretty great. The HallCon is just there, and I want to see what happens.
Yes.
I'm just saying, here's a space that is called hallway.
Yes, this is absolutely. I love it that this is physical space imagined as, like that's awesome that you're putting it in that, and you have the experience to bring this to people who are used to conventions, as well as introduce people who are, like your focus is on emerging people, to introduce them to the concept that then if they, when this is all over, get to go to a convention. These are all familiar spaces. You know what to do. Don't yell fire in a crowded room, but at the same time, feel free to speak your mind.
Yeah. And that's actually the part I found sort of most rewarding so far, aside from all of the other parts that have been rewarding. But I'm starting to hear things from people that are, I've never been to a convention because I couldn't afford it, or I've never been to a convention because I live in a part of the world where getting to where conventions happen is just not feasible, or because I've never been able to get away from work, or any number of reasons. And so that makes making this feel as much like an in-person convention as possible even more important.
Heck yeah.
Because we're going to have a lot of people who are bringing that experience of how normal conventions work to the space. And so supporting that and allowing it to breathe as much as you can in a virtual environment, so that everybody who doesn't have that experience gets as close to it as possible. We don't have a lot of opportunities to do something like that. So I want to make sure that we maximize it as much as possible.
Absolutely. And you touched on it for just a second, but let me ask to go back to, because it was specifically something I was thinking about, was the booksellers, the vendors. And that's something that to me didn't feel replicable in a virtual space. So do you want to talk a little about what you want to do for them?
Yeah, so this is one of the ones that honestly I have a lot of plans for next time around, because just the overhead on putting things together, this has had, it's a little bit smaller than I would have ideally preferred, but it's really cool anyway. So we've got kind of two things going on with vendors. One of them is we have a catalog with all the programming that's kind of like the PDF virtual version of your convention pamphlet. And we've got a catalog at the back of that listing the vendors who have asked to sort of be involved. And so you can just see, here are people who are out there providing services and goods that are relevant to your likely interests, given that you are here. And so go check them out here, convenient PDF, really beautiful. People who have layout and design skills are amazing. And this is a black box to me. I can't do a straight line to save my life. And it's a gorgeous book. Ashley, who made it, is, my hat is off to her. I don't wear a hat, but I will put one on to take it off. So we've got catalog listings going into the back of that. And then also we have a dealer's room on the Discord. And so anybody who has communicated with us around they are a dealer of some sort will be put into a Discord group, so that if you want to just sort of track them down, you can find them that way. And we're doing showcase windows in the dealer's room that are scheduled.
Nice.
And I believe we're even going to have a bot sort of announcing who the primary focus is at a given time. And so it's not going to literally be like walking down aisles with everybody having their display out, and sort of, we can't quite get you to that. But it will be a space where there'll be people there, and the reason the person is there is to sell you a thing. And this is actually like, when someone is on a panel and only talking about themselves and trying to sell you things when they should be talking about fantasy maps or whatever, that's obnoxious. But part of the reason a lot of people go to conventions is to find connections to goods and services. And so here's the space where you go to get that. And this is the space where we go, here, make your sales pitch. That is why the people came. We want you to do this. We want to connect you with your clients.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for talking to me about this conference coming up, and my Flights of Foundry. You guys can Google it. There'll be links posted below. Absolutely. And we look forward to this coming up this weekend. I signed up for it, and I highly recommend it to our Houston peeps out there who have been watching the videos. And we do hope you come join us again for writer's lunch once physical space becomes possible again. I have a couple of more questions, and I don't know how long my Zoom is going to last before the free trial cuts me off. So can I
There are
ask?
only 2 of us in the stream, so it will not cut us off because we are below the threshold where it enforces that.
That's good to know, but being succinct, I'm still going to use that as my excuse. So I have a couple of more, but I'll ask for short answers, okay?
Sure.
Awesome. Okay. So how long in the future are you really planning on events and travel to be affected by or limited, by kind of Rona,
So we made the decision, we had a 5-year plan initially when we launched, and we made the decision sort of at our pivot meeting to insert an 18-month pause.
Cool.
Like at that point. So we are not counting ourselves as having missed marks until we subtract 18 months from everything, and that we'll potentially review and update depending on how things go. And that was at the moment we went 18 months is if everything is well managed, things should be pretty well. Things are not being well managed, so that'll probably get extended.
Hey, it'll happen. Do you think that the present circumstances affect, as far as writers go and getting yourself out there and pushing your career, do you think they affect emerging or established writers more?
I don't think it's a question of more. I think it's a question of differently. Yeah. So there's definitely an advantage to having an audience that you can sort of lean back on, but depending on what your relationship with that audience was, you might not actually be able to have access to them right now. And so you may have suddenly had sort of your connection to them cut off, depending on how you interacted with them. At the same time, anytime there's sort of a disruption in how people are engaging with life and the world and media, there's kind of an opportunity for somebody who's new.
Yeah.
So
that's a great answer. Absolutely. Heck yeah. So how is Chicago holding up from one third coast to another third coast? Let me ask you.
Since I'm not leaving my house much, I feel like I have a very narrow and localized perspective on it. I live under the train. And it's a little bit of a joke between me and my roommate where when the train goes by, I kind of wave at it and I go, "Hello, train. I am so glad we're all still here."
Have you been personally affected? I hope that everything's okay, family and friends with the coronavirus and all.
I had a couple of friends who picked it up. I lived in Seattle for a while. So there were a couple of friends who were like, "Oh, that thing I had was coronavirus," or, "Oh, this thing I have is almost certainly coronavirus." As far as I know, nobody has like a literal positive test.
No.
But lots of, there's no way it wasn't. Family-wise, everybody's fine. And like my biggest concern is my grandparents are 80 years old, and not very self-aware about it.
Yep. Yep.
But they're being more careful than I expected. I think largely because they're taking cues from their great grandchildren, my sister's children who are nearby, and sort of I think that they're being smart so that as soon as possible they can interact with the great grandbabies.
You know, when it's about conferences or writer socializing and stuff like that, but I blindly want to ask this, you know, how comfortable would you be with air travel in 6 months or 1 year, you know?
Um, so me personally, I am planning to hardcore never ever leave the city limits ever again.
It happens.
And
That's
that
what
is
I'm
not
asking you.
entirely the
Yeah.
current thing. I was already getting pretty, I lived in Chicago and then I didn't live in Chicago and I am back to living in Chicago. And when I came back to living in Chicago, I realized that actually I was deeply miserable not living in Chicago. And I was sort of expecting to kind of like chill out about being obsessed with Chicago when I had it all of the time. And a couple of months after I moved back, it was pointed out to me that I had gotten even more obsessive
Oh,
instead. And I was like, yeah, no, I think I need to admit that I have found religion, and it is Chicago.
you know, I can hear the Leonard Bernstein in my head. You are at Woody Allen Manhattan levels of obsession with your city. That's great.
Like,
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm pretty dedicated to. I don't think I'm even going to the burbs. Like,
One little thing is, how is your writing? And I know mine is basically just stopped at a standstill, and I hope to get it started again. How has your writing been affected by this lockdown and the coronavirus and all?
So that's kind of an interesting question for me because I'm a feast and famine writer.
Yep.
So I produce very high word count very quickly, and then I don't do anything for a while. And I, as this was going, had just finished drafting a big novel and doing some rewrites on it, and then doing final development on an interactive game I have coming out. And so this was going to be a fallow period for me anyway.
Huh.
And very much has been. And I've got, like, I can feel the sort of the gears in the back of my brain being like, all right, it's time to hit back, about on schedule. But I'm, planning a convention right now. So
So it's
I
time to
feel
say.
like in this moment when I hit the point where I'm breathing again and I'm recuperated, I'll just be right back at it like normal, and I will have had very fortunate timing on kind of a natural fallow period, because
Oh.
I probably would have missed a step in the cycle if it had been timed differently. But yeah, so like the answer is no, I have not been writing, but also I wouldn't have been.
Well, congratulations, and Flight to Foundry looks great. You guys have a great guest list. We'll post links below about the event coming up. We'll try not to blow out your bandwidth, but I do hope you have some tense moments
Don't
of
worry about that. That's my
so
problem, not
many
yours.
people on there. Awesome. Thank you so much for talking to us, Jessica Eanes. Absolutely.
All right. Have a good one. Take care.